I see I have few new subscribers. I'm not sure if you've seen the old videos and decided to subscribe or not, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. If anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to comment. I will try to reply. I also appreciate all the suggestions I get. Most of them are good, at least. Support is also nice. This is another video where I tackle the other three-wheeler we have been using during the summer to get around. This is a Honda 200E. I also apologize for the beard and hair, but when the corona hit and traveling was kind of banned and so on, I decided to just don't care until it's safe to travel again. So we'll see if I'll become a hermit, or what you call someone who stays by himself all the time and never shaves or anything. But this back to the machine now. I started with the front end on this one. This is an older, simpler one. There is no real oil in the front here. It's just two like sealed dampeners or a dampener, or is that the kind that makes things moist? Is it a damper? Well, whatever. I just picked it apart to clean things. There are some plastic bushings. I actually gave this a lot of love like 10 years ago with plenty of new spare new parts. I think I had the lower legs here powder coated and some other pieces powder coated, so most of the stuff is quite functional. Just cleaning things up and adding fresh lube. There's a lock ring, just pushing that into its groove. It was kind of damaged up here because of corrosion. Last time it was apart, so had a break with the three-wheeler and looked over the chains for the harvester. Some are beyond sharpening and some are gonna go off to get sharpened. Also looked over the saw bars. Some were sent off to be straightened and some were put in the trash. Front brake was broken apart, just cleaned, lubed, ready to be put back in place. Grease in the front wheel bearings. I also wanted to look at the steering, the triple clamp. It's in poor condition on this one also. Yeah, I put the other one back together. I still haven't purchased the lid for the differentials that has. This one is simpler and has a chain drive. So handlebar removed, the front fork part removed, making sure not to lose any of the bearings because it's loose balls in here. Cleaning things up. And the bearing race is kind of damaged in the area where it gets the most force. So a redneck short-term solution, some heat and some screwdrivers wiggling it up a tiny bit and then twisting it 90 degrees to kind of get fresh material where the most load is put. I will need to order new bearings for the steering to both of the three-wheelers. Well, fresh lube was added and bolted back together. It's a bit fiddly with the loose balls. Just make sure you don't lose any. I think it will still work if you have one lost, but better not to. First time this was apart, it was a surprise for me, and they were very dry and bolts were falling everywhere. Took some time finding all of them. and the handlebars back in place, and the front fork, the suspension part, it's a little bit tricky getting the rubber boots over because they kind of go over the bolt that holds it in place. So but they were replaced not too many years ago, so they're still kind of soft, the rubber. I guess they will go bad in the future again. But tried lubing the cable for the front brake. My kind of special thing to force lube in didn't work very well. It's kind of too thick, or so I tightened down a clamp on a piece of hose that I could have on there and fill that with lube and let that sit for a long time to make sure it got lubed. So the front end is done, so it was lifted up, well, apart from new grips for the handlebar. It was turned around and could start working on the rear end. It's nothing major back here, just lubing things up. Remove the wheels because the axle is coming out. Then I ran into issues because this is a homemade skid plate back here to save the chain guard and so on. That was in really poor condition when it was looked over last time, and the bolts here were way too long, so they had started corroding above the nut that holds them. So, and it's kind of a countersunk Allen head, and it's stripped and took way too long to get it off, and not really access with a Dremel or a cutting tool, so it came out eventually. With skid plate finally removed, getting access to the chain, I thought it would be in worse condition than it is, but it's been enclosed, and I've opened up some holes and lubed it over the years, and sure, it's a little bit dirty in there, but the wear on the chain and the sprockets is not that much. It's not a very powerful machine, so holding the rear brake and undoing the nuts, holding the rear axle. Kind of a different setup here since it's a chain drive and not a differential like the other. So here I made a mistake. I should never have pulled the chain out. I should have let that hang around the front sprocket, but I had to break it apart to be able to undo the rear axle. Unhooked the rear brake lines. Also removed this plastic because it's kind of cracked, and it has been repaired before, but it started cracking more, and we're gonna do some redneck repair to just extend the life on it some. And fan in the car had issues, was just running on full speed, and there is a sensor deep up in there, and the fan was making a bit of noise, so had that out and sprayed in some lubricant there, and it got better. Plenty of guides online and YouTube videos covering this operation on a Skoda Fabia. Also had gotten a tool that it was actually for my a toy. It was for my niece, and the electric motor was dead, but when we complained we got our money back, and they didn't want it returned, so I added a crank to it, so it's hand operated now and not battery operated. Back to the three-wheeler, cleaning up the rear brake, had that axle out on it and lubed things up. Just a bit of dirt there, brake dust. Everything looked really good. Had the seals on the bearings out and added some grease. The rear end had no real issues. And then another patient in the garage, my dad's car had a check engine light, and he suspected the fuel filter for a long time because he has never changed it for many miles. Now I think we have quite good fuel coming out of the pumps here in Sweden, but he had purchased the filter at some point and never got around to replacing it, so, and it's not that tricky of an operation. But and here is something I've been meaning to do for a really long time. The drain plug to drain any condensation water out of the compressor. I'm gonna fit the ball valve down there so you can do a quick open and close and drain that a lot more often. With the filter replaced, even if purging it per manual or as the guides online suggested, it required some cranking to get it started. But check engine light is still on, so. But eventually it started. More on the check engine light later in the video, even if it's a side track. Well, the rear carrier, the axle carrier was mounted back in place. Here I had done something special. I think it should be a rubber grommet here. I didn't have anything suitable size. It took some force getting something on there. The rear axle could be put into place, and here I had a struggle for a long time getting the chain back around the front sprocket. Put the wheel back on the axle to be able to hold it while tightening up the rear axle, and then the lock nut. This cover here is held in place with some clips around the edge also, and I know last time we kind of overhauled and gave this machine some love, we made a couple of new clips. Yeah, and I had gotten shorter bolts for the skid plate to not have the same issue again. Put some washers in the spring to release tension and be able to unhook it, and then add some grease to the foot brake. Also found a cracked hose that comes from the crankcase vent and goes back into the airbox, and also out. I'm not sure exactly how the routing here is supposed to be, if someone has done something special at some point or not. Yeah, it was complaining about some sensor on the air intake, and I think I might have found the problem. I don't think he has changed the air filter either in pretty much forever, so but it had kind of this foam on the end of it, so I just ripped that foam off, and that seems to have cured the car for now. And fires up. It also had a little bit of damage to the wiring out to the sensors it was complaining about. Have a quick disconnect extra lights on my dad's car also because of theft. These spring clips cannot be purchased anymore, and I know we manufactured some last time, but I had planned to be lazy, just buy a couple of them, but saw blade and some heat and some bending, and voila, a new spring clip that's good enough. The plastic that was removed, my dad had made a metal plate and kind of shaped it to go around. Yeah, and another hiccup, the snowmobile has been running ill and not very good lately, so, and the spark plugs were quite black, so we'll need to replace them in the future. Some drilling and some pop rivets, and it should be good enough to last a few more years, hopefully. And with that kind of stiffened up, it could start going back into place. And with the fender in place, the wheels could start to go on it. The vent hose that was replaced, I found some little foam filter, widening the hose some. That filter could be fitted on there. I'm not sure if it helps, but it can't hurt. Also drain the oil. We have had a bit of an issue with the carb flooding on this one this summer, and I think I've got a bit of fuel in the oil because it's kind of grey, so I will do another quick change as soon as it has been used a little this summer. I've written a note on it to do that. Some hairspray and new grips. Usually hairspray makes it lube it enough that it goes on there easy and glues it in place enough to hold it. The front brake cable was sorted and then it was lifted up for storage for a few more months before it's time to bring it out again. The other machine was also gonna go up there, so it was lifted up on the bench for a quick oil change also, and I removed the skid plates. It's not been off in years and had a little bit of oil leaks if you've seen all my videos. So did some cleanup. Also a new filter. This one has a more conventional paper filter, the other has kind of just a mesh that you clean. That's it. More on forest machines will follow